Assalamualaikum and hello to our beloved lecturer, Dr. Heidi Henry Dusim. Our group will be presenting about the Asian Charter. First and foremost, let me introduce our team member that consists of Shazwina Adlyna, Raihana, Nylea Idzwa, Qatrunnada, Sufie Qistina, and Nadeen Sofea. So in this presentation, we will be discussing the introduction, issues, or factors, parties involved, which comprises of the advantages and disadvantages of Asian Charter, and the recommendation and conclusion. Without further ado, I will introduce to you what the Asian Charter is. The Asian Charter serves as a firm foundation in achieving the Asian community by providing legal status and institutional framework for Asian. It also codifies Asian norms, roles and values, sets clear targets for Asian, and presents accountability and compliance. It entered into force on 15 December 2008 in the presence of Asian foreign ministers at the Asian Secretariat in Jakarta. Asian will henceforth operate under a new legal framework and establish a number of new organizations to boost its community building process, and in effect, the Asian Charter has become a legally binding agreement among the 10 Asian member states. Furthermore, Asian Charter emphasizes, among other things, such as democratic institutions, transparency, good governance, and human rights. Asians' adherence to the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of member states and the need to uphold non-discrimination of any of the Asian countries in the group's external relations. Asian also aspires to enhance regional cooperation and integration through the establishment of an Asian community comprising the Asian Security Community, the Asian Economic Community, and also the Asian Socio-Cultural Community. Asian countries continue to prefer non-aggressive and exclusive reliance on peaceful means to settle differences or disputes. The principles set in the Charter include respect for the principle of territorial integrity, sovereignty, non-interference, and national identities of Asian members. Next, establish a human rights body and an unresolved dispute mechanism to be formalized at Asian summits. Thirdly, development of friendly external relations and a position with the United Nations. Lastly, upholding international law with respect to human rights, social justice, and multilateral trade. Meanwhile, the objective of developing Asian Charter is to preserve Southeast Asia as a nuclear weapon-free zone and free of all other weapons of mass destruction. Next, reduce poverty and narrow gap development within Asia through cooperation. And lastly, to ensure that the people and the member of states of Asia live in peace and harmonious.
The Asian Charter is a document that serves as the legal framework for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. It was adopted on November 20, 2007 and entered into force on December 15, 2008. The Asian Charter outlines the purposes, principles, and structures of ASEAN as well as the rights and obligations of its member states. Here are some key factors of the Asian Charter. The first one is purposes and principles. The Charter sets out the purposes of ASEAN, which include enhancing regional peace, security and prosperity, promoting democracy, human rights and good governance, and fostering cooperation in various fields. It also establishes the principle of ASEAN, such as mutual respect, non-interference in domestic affairs, and consensus-based decision-making. The second one is rights and obligations. The Charter defines the rights and obligations of member states. It emphasizes the principle of sovereign equality, territorial integrity, non-interference, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. It also encourages member states to uphold democratic values, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. These factors, among others, contribute to shaping the Asian Charter and provide a legal foundation for the functioning and development of ASEAN as a regional organization. While Asian Charter provides a legal framework for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, there are some challenges and issues associated with its implementation. Here are a few key issues in the Asian Charter. Firstly is consensus decision-making. The Asian Charter maintains the principle of consensus as the basis of decision-making within the organization. While consensus has been a fundamental principle for Asians' cohesion and non-interference in domestic affairs, it can also hinder the speed and effectiveness of decision-making. The requirement for an unanimous agreement among member states can lead to delays and compromises that may hinder progress on critical issues. The second one is implementation gap. The Asian Charter sets ambitious goals and objectives for regional integration and cooperation. However, there is often a gap between the aspiration outlined in the Charter and their actual implementation. Member states have different levels of commitment and capacity to fulfill their obligation under the Charter, which can hinder progress in achieving Asian goals. These issues highlight the complexities and ongoing discussions surrounding the implementation and effectiveness of the Asian Charter. Addressing these challenges requires continued dialogue, cooperation, and commitment among Asian member states to strengthen regional integration, address disparities, and uphold shared values and principles.
I am Sufie Qistina, and I am going to explain regarding who are the parties involved in Asian Charter. So the parties involved are all 10 Asian state members, which include Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei, Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Philippines. These 10 members will be governed by the Asian Charter to ensure harmony and cooperation among Southeast Asian nations. And all members will meet in one nation to debate the creations, revisions, and amendments to the Asian Charter. The Asian Summit will bring them together, and this summit will be conducted twice a year for Asian members to discuss about Asian regional challenges and issues. We move on to the advantages of Asian Charter. One of the positive outcomes of the Asian Charter is that its formation has increased the organization's effectiveness. It signifies that the Secretary General and Asian Secretariat are critical to achieve the Asian community's goals. The Secretariat of Asian was last reformed in the early 1990s. However, owing to reorganizations in the Asian Secretariat, the scope of Asian's operation has expanded. The Asian Secretariat must be strengthened and its policy research, planning, administrative, and monitoring capacities improved. Aside from that, the Asian Charter has led to better decision-making. The Asian's consensus decision-making process has been beneficial to the organizations and should be retained as the guiding philosophy. Consensus has aided Asian's unity and effectiveness while not impeding it. Asian may seek alternate and flexible decision-making mechanisms as the scope of its activities broadens.
Next, disadvantages of Asian Charter. One of the disadvantages of Asian Charter is in terms of resource mobilization and development gap reduction. For Asian to be competitive, increase the overall size of the economic pie and utilize many opportunities, as well as the development gaps that cannot be ignored if Asian want to grow collectively. And therefore, in order to achieve this and to build the Asian community, huge resources is needed. However, Asian faces a shortage of certain resources. Thus, this will be needed to review the organization budget to determine how effective it is to meet the new demands. Then, the second disadvantage of Asian Charter is it does not impose a problem in terms of lack of vision, ideas, or action plans, but the problem is to ensure compliance and effective implementation in accordance with the law. However, Asian does not have a culture of commitment to respect and implement decisions, also agreements according to the timeline.
Okay, next we move on into the recommendation. So the first, the ASEAN Charter should seek to preserve and strengthen the ASEAN membership, cohesion, and the unity. ASEAN leaders should take appropriate measures to help the member states fully comply with the ASEAN objective, principle, and commitments under the Charter and importance of the ASEAN agreements. So at the same time, the Charter should also include the provision for measures to redress non-compliant and serious breaches. So such measure may include the temporary suspension of rights and privilege of the membership, such as withholding the right to participate in the ASEAN activities and to chair ASEAN bodies and their meetings. So all states in the recognized geographical region of Southeast Asia can become member states of the ASEAN. So in addition, all member states are required to subscribe to and fully implement all the objective, principle, and commitment as contained in the Charter and in the existing ASEAN Declaration, Agreement, Concord, and Treated, as well as the norm and value adhered by the ASEAN. Second, achieving closer integration in addressing new transboundary challenges such as the natural disaster, new pandemic, transnational crimes, and terrorism. So it requires stronger and regional efforts and timely response. So this put new demand on the Secretary General of the ASEAN and the ASEAN Secretariat. So clearly, the ASEAN Secretary General cannot do this alone, so he needs to be supported by a stronger team and secretariat endowed with appropriate resources. So in order for the Secretary General and the Secretariat to effectively discharge their function, so it recommends that the Secretary General will be empowered with a greater role to meet the growing expectation of the member state as ASEAN steps up its regional integration and international cooperation efforts. As we know that ASEAN prone to the natural disasters such Malaysia with the flood season and Indonesia with the earthquake, so thus the leader of the ASEAN country must take action to reduce the rate and possibility to ensure that the ASEAN region is safe. It also can be seen a man-made pollution like a forest fire in Sumatra, which affected both Malaysia and Indonesia during the last several years.
Thank you, Qatrunnada. I am Shazwina and I will be explaining on the third point of the recommendation. The third point is offering benefits to its members. This means that the organization needs to support their members in developing their nation. Next, they must ensure that they are having healthy competition among themselves. Other than that, giving awards may encourage the members' involvement in Asian initiatives as a means of strengthening inter-member ties. From that, the organization will provide a prize to the best developed country and thus will increase a nation's motivation to work towards its objectives. For instance, they can give support for 4 least developed Asian countries such as Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Now, moving on to the conclusion. The difficulties that Asean will face over the next decade and beyond are enormous. Hence, in order to actively and successfully confront and overcome these issues, Asean needs to strengthen itself. The Asian Charter was developed due to growing awareness of challenges and problems among Southeast Asian governments and the desire to address them. The establishment of this Asian Charter is also to regulate cooperation in certain areas such as economics, politics, and security, where the state members are required to carry out. The Asian Summit meetings, which are conducted twice a year by 10 member nations, may lead to collaboration amongst Asian countries. The meeting will be an opportunity to strengthen bonds between members from different states. Since the adoption of this Asian Charter, significant developments have taken place in a variety of fields, including politics, economics, and security. Not only that, the Asian Charter also played a significant role in preserving the stability of Southeast Asian states by assisting the members to improve the effectiveness and quality of decision-making within the organization. In a nutshell, Asian charters must take civic action to support the stabilization of globalization in order for the effort to continue and become more effective by undergoing the recommendations that Qatrunnada and I have mentioned previously. So that is all from our group. Thank you for your attention.